All right, welcome back to another episode of the Carbon Cardboard Podcast. I'm your host, Bryan, Q3 Cards, joined as always with my good friend Scott at F1 Castle. Finally,
Nailed it.
yeah,
Nailed it.
it took me like 8 episodes to do that. So, yeah, we just recorded not that long ago. So, if you have not had an opportunity to check out our 2025 driver predictions for the grid of Formula One, go back and check that out. Great conversation.
Fun
And
episode.
very fun, and I appreciate all the comments and stuff we got on that one. That's good. We don't get many of those, so I love interacting.
Oh, yeah.
And this is why we do this. I mean, we're not getting paid to do this. We're here to talk about our love of Formula One and grow the hobby, get more people collecting these cards. But Scott, I gotta be honest, like this feels a little weird just because about 12 hours ago, I was actually in your office right there.
It's true. You were right here in the castle, so to speak. Yeah.
So
Had a
anybody that
little
doesn't know, so just peel behind the curtain here a little bit. I live in New Hampshire, and the F1 Castle is in New York. A very short 3.5 hour car ride, and I'm able to be at the castle gates. So
few cardboard podcast episodes and you're here,
yeah, not tonight though. This one probably will be a little bit shorter than the normal,
It's
but
true.
yeah, no, it's always good to hang out at the castle for a little bit. I think it was my second trip there, but there was a really good reason to go to the castle this time. I did have some precious cargo to bring back with me. However, there was another reason for me to go there.
It's true. It's funny you say that was your second time here, and I'm just now putting together that both times you've visited the castle has been for a Max Verstappen Superfractor portrait.
I mean, if something's gonna get me to go to drive almost 4 hours one way, it's gonna be a card like that. So
Yep. There we go.
let's
Yes.
talk about this, Scott, because this happened April 12th.
That's right. Right there. You can see it.
Hashtag as the young guys do, only in the F1 Castle. Fanatics Live, even.
That's right. Yeah. Hashtag pulled on Fanatics Live. Not our first big hit on Fanatics Live, but definitely one of just a few massive cards that we've pulled on Fanatics Live since we started ripping over there. And this was pulled for Racing Chronos for Scott, my man. And interestingly enough, this is probably the biggest card that I've pulled out of Sapphire. I think the next biggest is the Charles Leclerc Pad Paraja portrait, which I also pulled for Scott. That was right at the beginning in, box one, pack one, or pack two, whatever it was, right at the beginning on release day. But yeah, so this is my first Sapphire selection. So for people that are unfamiliar, in 2023 Sapphire, they added in Sapphire selections. So there's only 10 drivers. So the checklist is 10 total. And portraits, they have base, which is blue, which I think you said Lando Calrissian did the math on. There's around like 76 or
76-ish, yeah.
76 base. And then there's orange out of 25, red out of 5, and Superfractor 1 of 1. There's also Sapphire Selections autographs, which are only red out of 5 and Superfractor 1 of 1. But yeah, so this one just hit less than a week ago. My first Sapphire Selections Superfractor. Absolutely beautiful. Actually, have it right here. Prepped. It's prepped, ready to go. Ready to go. There we go. By Q3 here. But yeah, so amazing pull. I mean, when I saw you always get that feeling when you see like the golden discs. And I feel
Mhm.
like it was even more special in Sapphire just because it's never happened before, because this is the first year that they've done that, where they've put them in the product. And it was my first one. So I was like, oh God, don't be Lance Stroll. Don't be, Nico Hulkenberg. And it definitely wasn't. It was Max Verstappen. So Max Verstappen Superfractor portrait again. Ironically, my F110 that we talked about on one of the previous episodes, the Superfractor auto is on the F110. So this one doesn't get the $1,000 payout, but still an absolutely legendary card. And I'm actually gonna be meeting up with Scott this Sunday to hand it off in person.
Yeah, I'm practically speechless. This card is gorgeous, and there's just something about seeing a Superfractor in person that I don't feel like any camera or any photo does justice. Like, I'm even looking at on here on the screen, and I know
Yeah.
you took a really high quality photo of this, but just the ability to kind of hold the card and at the different angles, and it just catches the light,
Dance it off the light.
dance it off the light. But and it's like the best of both worlds because Superfractor and Sapphire, you've got like that cracked ice look to it.
Mhm.
It's just I hope they stick to something like this. I would love, although let me as I walk that back a little bit. I love to see it every year. However, like it would also be nice to kind of keep some notoriety of the set where, like with
Yeah.
2020, which we keep meaning to still talk about. I want to do an episode about all the image variations of 2020 at some point. It's on the docket at some point. But the borderless design here, it just really harkens back to that original design. And
Amazing.
some of the photos are great. We were talking with somebody recently, and it's just such a bummer that for Lewis's card, it's the same image as his portrait. This is one of the best Max photos I think we've gotten, and it's weird because he's not really smiling, but if it definitely is the stereotypical, like, Dutch is just like, it's like that quiet confidence. He's done like the number one.
Well, I'm pointing at the mini helmet because he's
Oh,
got his
yes.
helmet, and I've got that mini helmet right here,
I actually
right
have
there.
mine. Mine's over here somewhere off screen.
And it was in the shot when I pulled the card too. It was in canvas.
Nice. Yeah, it was all planned. It was a
Oh,
plant.
yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, no, just amazing. Yeah, so anytime there's a Superfractor pulled, I'm willing to make the trek to New York, but man,
Yeah,
yeah,
Superfractor, Brad Benavides, you'll come out?
we'll talk. I'll have my people talk to your people. But yeah,
Okay.
no, congratulations to, Racing and Kronos. And then,
Thanks.
while we're talking, Sapphire here, you also had a couple other big hits that we'll talk about. We are gonna talk about the
Yeah.
Chinese Grand Prix in a little bit, but we've thought this was just like we probably could have talked about this when we did our driver predictions, but it doesn't really fit into the
Yeah.
format of that show. But
Yeah, I mean, so this was crazy because this was actually just a couple days ago. I had ran you know what's interesting? So that Max came out of on Fanatics Live. I ran one case of Chrome, one case of Sapphire mixer, and that Max came out. And then I ran one case of Sapphire, one case of Chrome on Instagram and did some Percy's and stuff. Jeff.crypto.cards hits this Lando Norris number. I think it's the number 26. Number
26, yeah.
26. Yeah. I mean, and this is one of the three in the set, like helmet type cards, right? There's the Sergio Perez number 10, Lando Norris number 26, and Oscar Piastri 41. And this Lando, oh my gosh. It's funny because early on, I was struggling with this product when I had a pink of Pad Baraja, of knowing like, is it Pad Baraja? Is it red? Is it now I've pulled enough where I'm like, oh yeah, this is pink. This is gonna be pink. And sure enough, this was. And I mean, this came out of a Percy, not a bad way to land on a Percy. And this was actually just moments, like maybe 15 minutes after I had pulled a card in my 1-1 Chrome Sapphire break on Instagram, which was even bigger than this Lando. And that was Michael Schumacher, Legends, 1 of 1, Pat Paraja. I mean, talk about an absolutely iconic, massive card. And again, the F110 dodging. I have the Michael Schumacher image variation, Pad Paraja, on my list that would pay out 1,000. And this is the portrait. So this also doesn't pay out $1,000, but a massive card nonetheless. And I mean, this was on a $345 spot. Like this wasn't even, buying Percy's of cases and stuff like Jeff normally does. Like Jeff again hit both these cards, both this and the Lando. Jeff hit them both, and he is just stacking up the Pad Parajas for 2023 Sapphire for sure.
Wow, that's all I gotta say. Just and the so I don't know if I think we've talked about this before too. I know the image variations are like a normal uh color photo,
Mhm.
but so these are in sepia, right? Like the
Yep.
negative.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think the image variation does look better. Like, I think this is a massive card. This is huge. I love it. But yeah, the image variation will absolutely look better than this. Just because, sepia, I get it, right? With the legends, it was like, oh, harken back, the old timey kind of thing. And I think Senna's works a bit more because it's like the full body, even like Coulthard as well, I think will look really good in Pad Paraja. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love the card. It was massive. When I saw the hat, I was like, oh boy, this is the real deal. So yeah, so some big hits out of Sapphire lately in the F1 Castle for sure.
And it's getting a lot harder to find sapphire. It's if you go hunting, there's not much out there. So if you see them pop up on breaks and stuff, you definitely go you know I wouldn't wait. I mean, because once a lot of these big hits come out, like there's not going to be much left. So um,
It's true.
get it while you can. Speaking of getting it while we can, so Scott, we do have a Grand Prix this weekend. We do have a sprint weekend this
Yes,
weekend.
first sprint of 2024.
General thoughts about like this, Scott. Like, how do you feel about the sprints? Just as a fan, you've been a fan for a very long time. You're
Yeah.
very open to change. Like, what is your opinion of the sprint weekends?
So I think overall they're good. And they're good for a couple of reasons. A, they give something on Friday, right? Like, in the past, Friday is FP1, FP2. So FP1, it's, teams getting in, getting their setup. And then FP2, maybe they do some qualification sims, right? Some qualifying sims. And like, that's it, and then it's just like, oh, okay, now we've got Friday data and we can try to look at it and see what it'll be like for the weekend. But that's it. That's all you're getting on Friday. It's not as exciting, especially being a track. It's not as exciting. Um, Now on a Friday, you've got FP1 where the teams are frantic to try to get their setup because that's the only session they have, right? And then you get a qualifying session on Friday. So I think that is a huge win. And then Saturday is also better because Saturday, instead of FP3, which historically is the most, meaningless session of the week, of the
Mhm.
weekend, instead of FP3, you get a sprint race, which is fun, exciting. It's a race, 100-kilometer race. And then you still have qualifying, for the race. I think the changes that they made now to split it up like that, I didn't like when they did like qualifying for the race on Friday and then Saturday was like sprint qualifying, sprint race. I actually really like the changes they made this year to the format. And then Sunday is still the race. So I think it adds more value on both Friday and Saturday. So that's good for the fans, really, especially the fans that are there at the track, but also the fans that are watching at home. And not only that, but it also adds some jeopardy. Like when the teams have all the sessions to figure everything out, generally, the fastest teams are going to be up at the top. But if they've only got one session and they make a wrong setup, it could really throw a spanner in the works, so to speak. So now we've got the schedule up here, right? For the sprint weekend, all times in EST here. So 11:30 Thursday, which is in an hour. So
Yeah,
by the time we posted this, the actual FP1 and the sprint quali will have already taken place.
that's right.
By the time we post this, but then Saturday or Friday rather, it's Friday at 11 p.m. 11 p.m. is going to be the sprint race. and then at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday is qualifying for the actual race, and then again at 3 a.m. on Sunday is as the Grand Prix. So if you're on the East Coast, this is a struggle. This one is tough. The West Coast, it's kind of just like really late. It's like a midnight start for things. But
Mhm.
East Coast, it's dead in the middle of the night. So it's a tough one. But should
I
be
will be
exciting.
yeah, I'll be waking up in the morning and not going on social media. I'll brew some coffee and watch some cars go around, and it'll be glorious.
There you go. Yeah. Make sure you don't open your phone.
No, no.
Don't touch your phone.
All right, so we're
Because
gonna go through a couple of your castle calls here really quick. Actually, before we do that, I had to realize that like we haven't raced here since 2019,
yep.
and the essentially the Drive to Survive generation essentially has not probably watched a race here, and I'm among that. So I don't. I had to just look up before we went recording here. I didn't know what the track layout looked like. I didn't know where in China
Long
it
straight.
was. I
Yep.
looked at it and I'm like, there looks like there's two long straights like that.
Yeah. There are two long straights. One of them is very long. The main straight is one of the longest on the calendar. And yeah, circuit just about like 30-40 minutes outside of central Shanghai. Weather's always crazy here though, by the way, because there's always like that haze
Mhm.
and it's always like changeable conditions. A lot of times it's wet, dry, wet. So hopefully we have something the same. I haven't looked at the forecast, but hoping for some changeable conditions.
All right, let's go through. So we're going to bring up on screen here your different castle calls. You can also find these on your Instagram at F1 Castle, not at the F1 Castle. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's probably sitting on that name by now because I've said
It's
it so
me.
many times.
I've
Oh, you
had
have
it
both?
for a while. Yeah, I actually had that one like a year ago. I made that one that I was gonna do just F1 non-card related content. I ended up not panning out, but yeah, so I've got them both. So we're
There
good.
you go. You're safe. No one's going to take your name on that one.
I've had people message me on it. It's funny.
It's probably my fault. All right, so let's talk about predictions for pole. Why is the sprint pole, excuse me, why is it gonna be potentially a little bit different, do you think?
So, I mean, I think this one will be a little different because, again, I touched on the fact that we have that very long straight. Now, you also have to keep in mind, since, like you said, we haven't raced here since 2019. The new era of ground effect cars, they've never been here. They've never driven on this surface. Speaking of the surface, there's been multiple changes. They've grinded out a bunch of areas on the surface. They've resurfaced and even like painted some of the areas. Carlos Sainz was talking about it. He's worried that it's going to be like Istanbul, Turkey 2021 2.0 when they resurfaced that circuit and then it was wet and they were basically driving on ice, they were all saying.
Mhm.
So I mean there's concerns over the surface, and generally Shanghai very front limited with the long straight and then heavy braking zones. If it's dry, extremely front limited. So the front tires, you'll burn through them really quickly. So I mean, we'll have to see. The weather will definitely play a role, but I also think you're going to see, maybe Ferrari mocks up with a skinnier wing, little Monza-esque, because those long straights are pretty big. And you can see there, bottom left, the little icon for Shanghai. So the main straight, extremely long. And then after turn 4 or 5 into that other long straight on the two DRS zones. I mean, I think the Ferrari could be good if they run a skinny wing, especially in qualifying. Now, it might hurt them over race distance because it will hurt their grip on the turns, but yeah, I mean that long straight looks pretty appetizing. I think Carlos Sainz, smooth operator, gets it done for the sprint pole, continues his terrific run of form, and I think here in about 5 hours, I think Carlos Sainz is taking it down for sprint pole.
Spicy.
Oh
All
yeah,
right, let's go to the results of that. So your castle call for the sprint podium, also very spicy.
Yeah, so spicy here on the sprint podium as well. So I actually have Sergio Perez taking P1, Sainz P2, and Max P3. And what I think happens here is I'm actually predicting the sprint qualifying Sainz 1, Max 2, Perez 3, Leclerc 4. And I think Max just doesn't get a good start out of the second position, and Perez gets a really good start and passes Max initially, and then gets past Signs because the Red Bull is going to have superior race pace. Like I don't think that's going to be a question. I hope I'm wrong. And it's a bit closer, and Ferrari's up there with them. I really think Red Bull's race pace is going to be pretty good. So I think Perez takes P1, and I think Sainz just really defends aggressively, and Max decides to just sit back and not worry about things in the sprint race, and ends up P3.
All right, let's go to the Grand Prix. So this will be after the sprint race on Saturday.
Yeah. So qualifying for the actual Grand Prix, I have Charles Leclerc here on pole. I think, he's going to dust himself off. He's had a few or a couple qualifying performances in a row now where he's been beaten out by Signs. And again, I think he's going to be beaten out by Signs in the sprint qualifying. But I think he's gonna dig down. He's gonna find that special Leclerc extra 1 or 2 tenths that he in the past has always seemed to find. And I think he's going to get it done when it matters. Second run in Q3 during qualifying. And I think Leclerc is going to be on pole.
Very feasible. It sounds like Ferrari's going to have a good car here. Hopefully they have the race pace, but
yeah.
All right. Let's go to your podium predictions.
Yep. And so podium prediction here, pretty standard. If Leclerc is on pole, that means a Max win. And so Max, I think when it comes to the race, I think Max is going to have race pace just above everybody. And I think he's going to take it pretty handedly. I think Leclerc will hold on for P2. And I'm actually banking on maybe a couple issues for Checo in the race, and maybe, just some aggressive and fortuitous strategy for Fernando Alonso, who has always done really well in Shanghai historically, especially back in his glory days, back when he was winning championships. But he's done well in China, and I think Fernando Alonso is going to make his first podium appearance of 2024.
That could have been a castle call, but it's not the castle call.
It's not.
All right, so we got one more slide here, and this will be the castle call.
Castle call. So we're going again. Last race rather, I did the Sonoda home race, right? So I gave him, points. Joe in his home race, points would be insane. So we're not going quite that far because he is driving a stake F1 team car. So points would be pretty tough. But I'm actually going to go for my castle call that Joe makes it into Q2. So makes it out of Q1 for the first time in 2024 for Joe. And I will say this one may be a little bit more with my heart than my head because he has lost out to Bottas by like 4 or 5 tenths in qualifying in general in Q1. So I'm hoping that, he just is buoyed by the home crowd and, just puts it all together for one run in Q1 and gets to go again in Q2. I'm not so bold as to say he will make it into Q3.
That's tough. That would be a bold call indeed. So yeah, no, it should be fun. So I know a lot of us will probably be watching this race on delay. So if you are on social media, don't look at your phone. Don't look at anything. Brew your coffee.
Stay away.
Stay away. Watch the race, and it should be good. So, Scott, in addition to that, you got anything coming up in the castle here? Are you going to be breaking? I know we've talked a little bit about your Sunday plans.
Yeah. So Sunday, like I said, meeting up with Scott to hand off the Max. But as for breaks, so lately I've been doing mixers. I actually split it up a little bit this time. I'm running 5 cases of Chrome on Instagram, so that break is posted. If you want to hop in, pick your driver, and then I'm running 3 cases of Sapphire
Ooh.
on Fanatics Live. So both 2023. Yeah, so 5 cases of Chrome if that's more your bag. That's on Instagram, and then 3 cases Sapphire on Fanatics Live. So those will both be like this weekend, early next week, is when we'll probably be running those. And then yeah, guys, I also, all of my predictions and castle calls and everything I posted on Instagram. Please join in, share your predictions as well. Comment on my posts, or comment here on our video here on YouTube, and let us know what you think, and how terribly my predictions are. And Bryan didn't make any, so he can just
Yeah.
say I told you so after the results are in.
I don't know. All the torches and pitchforks are still out for the Zane Maloney call. So
Oh man, that was funny. I actually talked with Reckless. He's a good dude.
um,
He's a big Teo fan. Teo, by the way, sorry,
yeah.
last thing here. Teo racing an IndyCar this weekend in Long Beach for McLaren. So that's kind of out of left field, but gives him a little McLaren link. Not that I think that will go too far in the F1 realm, given that they have
So
2
is
very
he is
young
he
drivers.
so is he subbing in because they need a replacement, or what's the? I don't follow that circuit as much.
I haven't looked into it too much, in terms of like whether they need a replacement or whether they just have an extra car. Like IndyCar is different, where you can kind of just run cars. Like, at the Indy 500, you'll see teams run cars that don't run cars at any other race the
Hmm.
entire year. So it's very different from Formula One. You can kind of just enter a car in a race, and like instead of running 2 cars, you can run 3 cars that weekend. So yeah, so Teo getting a run should be fun to see how he does. It's good for him. It's good to see him, and actually some of the other F2 guys. Paul Aaron from F2, he's racing in Formula E. I think that might have actually been last weekend, or it's this weekend coming up. But yeah, it's cool to see some of the younger guys who are either in Formula 2 or kind of Super Formula or wherever during their breaks get to race another series. I think it's cool. It's exciting.
Yeah, add some value to these cards that we collect in
There you
for
go.
Formula One. So,
That's right.
all right, Scott, I think that will wrap it up. We kept this under 30 minutes, so kudos to us.
That's right.
Why don't you go ahead and bring us home here?
All right, everybody. Well, enjoy the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend. And in the meantime, collect your cardboard, keep it carbon.